Hello, I'm Neil Quigley and welcome to the latest episode of my Blogcast. I hope I find you well and you've had a good couple of weeks. It's been busy again. I do like to keep myself nice and busy, so there's been plenty going on. A couple of weekends ago, my girlfriend very kindly took me to a free from food festival in London. It was in Woolwich, not a place I tend to go very often, for footballing reasons mainly. I have mentioned before, I was diagnosed as a celiac about 2.5 years ago now, which means I have to now follow a very strict gluten-free diet for life. So when I go to general food festivals or restaurants or even shops, finding food that I can eat safely can sometimes be a bit of a challenge. So when my girlfriend saw this festival aimed at people like me who have very special dietary requirements, she thought it might be good to go along. It'll be fun. It would be nice for me to be able to actually try and sample everything. And I may discover some new brands, some new food items to add in to my everyday diet. There was actually, I think, about 4 sessions across the weekend. We went for the afternoon session on the Saturday. We walked into the festival and on arrival we got a raffle ticket and a token to have a free gluten-free beer, which we took advantage of. Now at the moment I'm not actually drinking. I've been off alcohol for a bit, just a personal choice at the moment. So I was about to let Linda have both of the tokens when we discovered that my favourite gluten-free beer also has a non-alcoholic gluten-free version as well. So therefore, I tried some of that and I have to say it was really good. Thoroughly enjoyed it. So we collected our drinks and then started to have a look round. It was a free from festival. So it wasn't only that everything was gluten-free, it basically was dairy-free, nut-free. In fact, most of the products there were free from all of the 14 main allergies. So basically, I could eat absolutely everything in there. Most of the stalls had samples of their goods, so I got to try lots of different things. There were a lot of health foods and superfoods there, which was great. Some of the problems can be with gluten-free food to substitute for the taste, lack of gluten, and indeed the texture of a lot of things. It can be quite ultra-processed, and they can add in lots of things that are not necessarily good for you and quite bad for your gut, which is not ideal when basically the thing you suffer from does affect your gut. And even when you're avoiding the gluten, some things that they put in to make up for that can actually, for different reasons, affect your stomach a little bit. It was interesting to find out a little bit more about that. There were some talks about that during the afternoon. So first of all, walked around, got a sense of where everything was, had a chat to a few of the people on the stalls there. Lots of people there were running small businesses and it was the actual owners there. So it was very interesting to talk to them about how they got started and all about their products and what they were, why they designed them, why they thought they were good. Once we'd done a complete circuit and I'd sampled a little bit of everything, outside there were 4 places where we could get hot food. Now, for the first time in a very long time, because of the nature of the festival, I could actually have anything from anywhere. It was all gluten-free. It was just a case of deciding what I wanted. In the end, I went for the chicken curry and rice, which was fantastic. Linda opted for the paella, which again, I did try a little bit, was brilliant. Once we'd done that, on the way round initially, I'd spotted a couple of pastry and cake stands. So I thought, I know what, I'll go and get myself some pudding there. The first one I came to, I decided I was going to get myself a cake to have, and I spotted this caramel and banana cake. It was cut into slices, so I asked for just a slice of that. As I was asking, because I'm a friendly guy, I did smile at the girl who was serving me. I don't know if she saw that as some sort of sign or hint, but with me doing that, she gave me the biggest piece of cake she had. This thing was huge. I sat down to eat it. It took me about 10 minutes to eat and a further 10 minutes before I could even contemplate moving. There was so much cake. I did thoroughly enjoy it, but it did spoil me a little bit for trying anything else there at all. Couldn't eat anything else the entire time while I was there. I did pick up some other items though, found some almost healthy snacks, some gut-friendly, gluten-free snacks. Also found some gluten-free fruit powder, which is basically supposed to act as a bit of a boost to your immune system first thing in the morning. You put it in your shakes or your porridge or in your cereal. So I bought some of that. And because we were going out after the festival, we didn't want to pick up too much. So what I did was I just took photos of all of the things I liked and found out where they were selling into, where their products were available. So I could then go back when I got home and order lots of different things online. So it was an absolute success. We were there for about 4 hours and I had a fantastic time and also discovered some new foods and some new things that I'm going to add into my gluten-free diet. So it was a worthwhile thing and it was a very nice thing for my girlfriend to do because she can eat gluten. She doesn't have to stick to a gluten-free diet, but obviously while she was there with me, that's exactly what was happening. After the food festival, we had tickets to see Bleak Expectations at the Criterion Theatre in the West End. It started its life as a Radio 4 comedy. It's basically a parody of Charles Dickens. Great Expectations, but played for laughs. As I said, it started out on the radio. They've decided to do this stage version of it. And what they're doing with it, it's running for quite a few weeks. And sort of in almost the style of the Rocky Horror Show, in a way, I suppose, they're having a different guest narrator for every single week that the show's performed. On the night we went to see it, Robert Lindsay was that narrator. Now, I think he is fantastic. I first saw him in Citizen Smith. That was my first introduction to him. And more recently, of course, in My Family. And also as well, I'm a big fan of musicals. And he was for ages in Me and My Girl, playing one of the lead roles in that. He can sing, he can dance, he can act. He really is the total package. Once, in fact, I was on a train into London and I happened to be already on the train when it went past the station where I actually knew he lived in that area. As it happened, this one particular day, he got on the train and sat down a few seats away from me. I was trying to play it cool and not look over too much, but he has got an amazingly distinctive voice. So you couldn't miss hearing him talking. And it was lovely. He was obviously travelling to London with a friend of his, a family friend, I think, who was also an actor, but more of a sort of up-and-coming, budding actor. And he was giving him so much good advice. It was brilliant. To be fair, I should have been scribbling the advice down. It might have come in useful at some point as well, but that was great. In Bleak Expectations, on that night, he was fantastic, funny, amusing. I think he threw in a little bit of extra for us as well as it went on. The production itself was just, as the lady behind me described it at the end, a bit of fun nonsense. It is nonsense, but it is very funny. The cast are brilliant. It just all works. And of course, there's so many Dickens mentions and similarities shoehorned in there. It's just completely silly, but it's very funny. I think it's on for a few more weeks. Tickets aren't too badly priced for it. So if you're in London and just fancy a bit of an escape from reality, I would definitely go and see that at the Criterion Theatre. And you'll get a great guest narrator as well. There's some really fantastic people lined up to do it still. It was the bank holiday weekend. On the Sunday, we had a barbecue at my girlfriend Linda's place. It was a slightly belated celebration for her mum's birthday the week before. So we had a few of her relatives around, a few of her cousins, her auntie, her brother and his family. So it was a nice little gathering. The weather held fine. It was nice and warm, certainly during the afternoon. Linda does enjoy hosting these kind of events and she always goes to a lot of effort. She makes so much food, gets in plenty of drink to make sure there's something and enough to cater for everyone who's going to be there. She also does all the barbecue cooking. So therefore, my sole responsibility really was looking after the drinks and making sure everybody had a drink if they wanted one and just kept them topped up along the way. The food, as ever, was fantastic. The company was great. We had a wonderful time. It did get to that point, though, where about 5-6 o'clock, the sun had just kind of gone in a little bit and it wasn't shining in the area of the garden we were sitting. And we were all trying to style it out in our T-shirts, but kind of one by one, everybody sneaked inside and came out with a top or a jumper. I'm not saying I was the toughest or bravest person there, but I did manage to last the longest before I went in and got my jumper. Mind you, by that point, I was starting to shiver and did have goosebumps. Eventually, after I did start to get quite cold, I convinced everybody to move inside and we continued the party inside for the rest of the evening, which was great fun. Had a fantastic time. And it was actually officially our first barbecue of this year. Hopefully we'll squeeze a few more in before the end of summer. Last weekend, it was my dad's birthday on the Friday, so I went and saw him and my mum on the Saturday. What we decided to do, he didn't really want to do much, and we are both football fans, so in the end, we decided we were going to watch the FA Cup final together and just get in a few nibbles. Well, I say we decided on the nibbles. I said, I'll tell you what, I'll get us a few nibbles. That way I knew I could go to the shop and just get all gluten-free nibbles, so I knew that I could just happily eat everything during the game. In the morning, before I went round there to see them, I had to watch this on ITV4. It was a programme I used to absolutely love as a child. It was one of the highlights of every weekend, particularly my Saturdays. ITV4, on the morning of this year's FA Cup final, were showing classic Saint and Greavesy compilations. So basically all the best bits from their FA Cup final shows from the 80s. And I must say, it was joyous. I'm a big Jimmy Greaves fan anyway, being a Spurs fan and him being such a legend. I did get to meet him once in Yeovil. I saw him do his one-man show there and got to have a quick chat to him afterwards. It was brilliant. He was brilliant. The thing about Saint and Greavesy, and indeed football itself, in the 80s, it didn't take itself as seriously. In those best of programmes, the week before the FA Cup final, Saint and Greavesy would each go to one of the finalists and they'd train with that squad. They'd mess about with them on the training ground. The manager would be involved. They'd all be having a laugh, all be having a giggle. Everything just seemed much more fun, and there was much more gentle, light-hearted ribbing. It made me nostalgic for those times when I was a kid, and everything was fun, and football just seemed a lot simpler, and in a way, more of a laugh. I thoroughly enjoyed that. I hope that ITV do that again next year. The other thing I felt that really worked for the FA Cup final this year was having it back at a 3 o'clock kickoff, the old traditional time, for the first time in I don't know how long. I think it just works because you get all that build-up during the morning and the afternoon. You get the game at 3 o'clock prime time. Even if it had gone to penalties and extra time, it had all been done by 6 o'clock. And also, it gives the fans who actually attend the game half a chance of getting home at a reasonable time. Well, it would have, I guess, if the trains were actually running on that day. I thought it worked. The game itself wasn't as good as I'd hoped, if I'm honest, but when you've got two fantastic footballing teams like that and it's a local derby, in a way, it's never going to be. And also, when a goal's scored within the first 15 seconds of a game, that does really make a bit of a difference and put one of the teams at a little bit of a disadvantage. That said, we had a good afternoon watching it, and I had far too many gluten-free snacks and a fair few cups of tea. But it was good spending time with my mum and dad and watching the game. By the time we got back to Linda's after saying goodbye to my mum and dad and driving there, it was getting on a bit. We were trying to work out what we were going to do. We were contemplating going out for dinner. We were contemplating maybe going to the cinema or going out somewhere. In the end, we decided to stay in and cook. And Linda suggested, because as it happens, her house is the house of food, that she had enough items that we could, if we wanted to, basically build our own pizzas for the night. All we needed to do was pop down to the local supermarket and pick up some pizza bases. So we did that, went to the local supermarket, found a gluten-free base. In fact, the deal was there was 2 gluten-free pizza bases together. So Linda took one for the team and said she'd have a gluten-free base. So we bought those, took those back to her place, and we each created our own separate pizzas. I must say, mine was fantastic. If you're interested in what was on it, here's what you need to make my off-the-cuff, completely made-up homemade pizza. You need tomato puree on the base first of all. You need plenty of mozzarella cheese. You need some onions. And you need a selection of Italian cooked cold meats. You also need some chili flakes and a little bit of chorizo as well. Stick that on your base, bang it in the oven. Job is a good one. I must say, I thought it tasted fantastic. I really enjoyed it. It looked good as well. Now, I am a big kid myself, but I don't have any kids, although I would imagine this would be something that would go down very well if you do have children of your own. It's worth doing. It's very easy. You can buy pizza bases, not only gluten-free, but ones that are full of gluten as well. If you like, you just get lots of things in, make your own pizza and cook it in about 10 minutes. It makes dinner much more fun. Although it did, of course, turn into a bit of a competition between me and her. My fault. I can't really do anything that doesn't have some sort of competitive edge to it. We did take to social media to try and gauge the opinion of who people might have thought was the best looking pizza, but nobody really got suckered into that. They were all very diplomatic and said that both our pizzas looked equally as good as each other. So I guess we have to call that a draw then. As we were looking for stuff to do on Saturday night, I spotted that at one of our local theatres, a show I knew my dad really liked and had seen before was on. So therefore, I offered to take him as an extra birthday treat to go and see that last Sunday. The show is called That'll Be the Day. It was on at the Aylesbury Waterside Theatre. It's now been touring for 37 years. They go up and down the country. They put on 2 different shows every year. I've seen it a couple of times before. My dad's seen them 2 or 3 times before over the years. It's music from the 50s to the 80s, a bit of comedy thrown in, a bit of silliness, a bit of nostalgia, all thrown together. The cast is so talented. They have a great bunch of musicians who play the music live on stage, and honestly, they are all top class. They have 4 main singers, but everybody in the cast who plays the instruments can also sing amazingly as well. And they change their outfits. They mock up new things or new ways of introducing the music to make it all come together. And so each show is slightly different. The 2 guys behind it who started it and have been running it, Gary and Trevor, I interviewed one of them when I was working down in Yeovil in Somerset. They were bringing That'll Be the Day to the local theatre, and I got an interview with him over the phone. And it was just after he'd done something relatively high profile, you could argue. Trevor is a fantastic Cliff Richard impersonator. Possibly, I think, one of the best in the country. He certainly looks very much like him. So when Peter Kay was putting together the Amarillo video, on it, if you remember it, not only have you got the late Ronnie Corbett sadly falling off the running machine in one of the scenes, also there is a Cliff Richard lookalike in that video, and that is Trevor from That'll Be the Day. He was in that. So I spoke to him just after he had recorded and made that and talked to him about the show, and that would have been 18 or so years ago, and the show is still going strong. Sells out up and down the country, and they really put so much work and effort into it, and they're nice people as well. It's just a nicely put together show performed by people who love doing it. So me and my dad had a great time seeing that. Again, lots of different new songs in there. It always gets the audience on their feet. I've never been to one of their shows and not seen everybody up on their feet by the end of it. I've been having problems with my ears for quite a few years now. It got to the stage where one of my ears was actually completely blocked. Without making it too graphic and to cut a long story short, I had some issues with a wax build-up in my ear. They tried to do the syringing at my doctor's, but seemingly there was so much stuff in there at that point, it just made it worse. So I got referred to the hospital, and since that, as it's an ongoing issue, I have a hospital appointment about every 6 months or so now, where because I get this build-up in my ear, the only way I can describe it is they basically have got this tiny specialist Hoover. So I go into the hospital and the nurses there are fantastic. And when I can feel my ears getting bunged up, I know my hearing's starting to suffer, I know things are not right, I manage to generally book an appointment, go and see them, and they do. They hoover out my ears. And it's such an odd sensation, an odd feeling. They have got a camera attached to it so they can see what they're doing on the big screen. And the big screen's right in front of you, so you can kind of watch. I'm very squeamish, so initially I would not watch at all. But I've been having this procedure so long now, I do tend to occasionally glance up at the screen and see what they're pulling out. I've just had it done, so my ears seem fantastic. I can hear nice and clearly once again, and they feel a lot more comfortable. So hopefully this will last a fair amount of time this time before I have to go back for another hoovering. Thankfully, the Premier League football season has now ended. It wasn't the best season for my team Spurs, and obviously lots of things are going on at the moment with a new manager and lots of other rumours about certain players who play for us. We'll see what happens ultimately, but at the moment, I'm actually looking forward to keeping an eye on a couple of the England games and then enjoying a bit of a break from football during the summer until the season starts again. Of course, I've renewed my season ticket, so I'll be at the Spurs Stadium next season, cheering them on and seeing how we get on then. I'm very much looking forward to this weekend. I'm heading up to the English-Wales border to catch up with the mate who I've been friends with for the longest. We met on our very first day at primary school. We're still great mates now, and we try and see each other at least 2 or 3 times a year, if not more. My girlfriend and I are going up to see him, his wife and their family, and I'm very much looking forward to it. Normally, they're such good hosts, we end up doing something fun, so I'll let you know what we get up to next time we speak. Just a reminder, you can hear my radio show Saturday afternoons between 2 and 4 on radio9springs.com. That is it for this week. Take care, look after yourselves and each other, please, and I'll speak to you soon. Bye-bye.